Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Razam Pereira. The government will reinitiate the process of divesting its stake in national carrier Air India, even as it increased its disinvestment target in the Union Budget 2019-20 presented by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Friday. The target for disinvestment receipts has increased to 1.05 trillion rupees for FY20 from 90,000 crore rupees in the interim budget presented in February. Significantly, the Finance Minister said that the government's stake in non-financial public sector units can go below the majority stake of 51%. Instead of holding a direct stake of 51% in PSUs, government-controlled institutions can chip in the remaining sum which the government will look to divest. This move will enable the government to retain control over such firms. The Finance Minister reiterated on Sunday that the government will make sure that its control is not diluted after lowering its stake in public sector undertakings to below 51%. The government will also continue with the strategic divestment of select central public sector enterprises. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the government's disinvestment target. Joining me on the program today are Sushil Chandra Tripathi, former Principal Secretary, Uttar Pradesh; R. Gopalan, former Secretary, Financial Services, Ministry of Finance, Government of India; and Dr. P. Pulla Rao, economist. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Gopalan, I'd like to begin the program with you. Your thoughts on the government's disinvestment target?
You think if it is about achievement of the disinvestment target,
Yes.
I think it is feasible to do it. Having done about 90,000 crores last year, it's possible to do. There will be a mix of strategic divestment. There will be ETFs and there will be OFS, which will be done for certain public sector institutions, PSUs, where the remnants are there of government holding is there. So there will be a mix of a lot of things. But judging from what the efforts of the government are, the preparedness of the government at this point in time, first, as has been a natural follow-up from last year's efforts, I'm sure the 1.05 trillion which you are talking of is feasible.
Okay, Mr. Tripathi, I'd like to bring you in now. It's not a new idea, of course. This is something that's been going on for a while now. But your thoughts on development through disinvestment?
You see, in the first NDA government, during the year 2000-2001, the single largest disinvestment and strategic sale was of Balco. And at that time, I happened to be, besides my position as Additional Secretary, the CMD of Balco. So I have gone through all the processes of strategic sale and strategic disinvestment. But now the government, as has just been pointed out by Mr. Gopalan, government has adopted several other strategies also, besides thinking of strategic disinvestment in some selected PSUs, like exchange traded fund, which last year was used quite successfully in several cases. Here the government keeps control, and the exchange and a bunch of PSUs are put together in a certain proportion, and some percentage of their shares are put in that box where the bunch is created, and then it is listed on the stock exchange, and it is available for sale. So by this method, the government keeps its control and are also able to sell shares of good PSUs as well as not so good PSUs, putting them together in a bunch. The third, of course, is offer for sale, where if the government follows the principle which the Finance Minister has laid down, that the public shareholding has to be 35%. There may be some PSUs where the public shareholding is not 35%, less than 35%, and they are listed. Their offer for sale can be there. And one more interesting feature the Finance Minister has brought out, that 51% shareholding need not be direct, because there are a number of companies where LIC and mutual funds like SBI, which are controlled by government, SBI, UTI, and insurance companies, GIC, they also hold significant percentage of shares. So direct shareholding and this indirect shareholding, if they are taken together to use the control of 51%, then I think in many more companies there can be divestment. And therefore, by using all these measures, I think a little over 1 lakh crores of rupees is not difficult to achieve.
Okay, okay, Dr. Pullara, you know, as far as disinvestment is concerned, why is it important that the government has a controlling stake in the first place?
First of all, you know, disinvestment also must be viewed in certain different contexts. You know, you divest investments which have gone bad, or there is no need. Now that we have global trade and other things, no point making a ship here when they're easily cheaper available abroad, or whatever. Goods which are available abroad, why have them made here by our public sector units which are making huge losses? But there are other things which, you know, cause worry, which have taken time to build. Those public sector enterprises which deal with the public in large numbers, you know, public consumes their goods, maybe the railways, maybe the Air India, you know, which has now become a very big issue. So therefore, I will say that government will have to retain control definitely in the financial institutions. I don't think even today they have said even the shares they sell in various financial institutions and other things, they will come down below 51%. Otherwise, government's policies, social welfare or having a stake on way to control the economy will go down very much. They will have nothing to do with the economy, and they will only have to rely on the RBI then. So to that extent, that 51% is psychologically and physically important. They retain management control. 51% is management control. Yes, even if a government has 20%, it can still influence management, but 51% is psychologically and for all other reasons necessary. So that's why the government is hesitant. But in other issues which you have also touched on, you know, there has to be, you make haste slowly. You know, that's one of the things which is worrying a lot of people is certain institutions like Air India, which have an impact on the aviation market in the country. Therefore, to what extent government will go full throttle and divest stake there is also causing concern. Now, naturally, it is a good thing that you want to get over these bad investments or these islands of prosperity, as they are called, for certain sections, public sector, you know, waste of money, duplication of work, all kinds of things, and setting a bad standard also. You know, the way they are indulging in, you see, oil companies, all they do is sell oil. Where's the competition for them? They control all, I think all oil marketing is literally controlled by the public sector units, so nobody has control over their costs. They're giving it to the customer at this rate. We don't actually find out how much there's waste in that. So, in fact, oil companies and other things, I would say go for divestment in a very big way. Not over things where the public needs you, otherwise you come into the grip of private monopolists totally. So, it's a good thing. It's always possible to sell out, especially when the economy is going to be buoyant, but make haste slowly in some issues.
So strategic divestment is the best way forward is what you're suggesting. And let me bring in Mr. Gopalan now into the picture. So I'm going to go back to a point that was being made by Mr. Tripathi about this 51% shareholding need not be directly under the control of the government. But, you know, public entities can really have control along with the government, and both together will have 51% controlling stake. What's the difference really, Mr. Gopalan? How does it matter whether, you know, the government directly has it or indirectly has it?
Well, you see, there's a government directly having it is government can nominate its directors and holding a 51%, and they are in a better position to influence the policies. Suppose they operate the remaining 51%, suppose they hold 40 and the SBI and LIC hold 11%, becomes 51, then that becomes in a sense government controlled, because LIC and SBI are in a sense government controlled. Yeah. So government still can implement or policies of those, I mean, whatever its policies are, just as Mr. Pullara mentioned about the policies which they want to, I mean, kind of implement in the country through these organizations. Obviously, they will have a much better say in doing it rather than having a 40% stake in the company. Though there is a possibility that they can have still have a 33% and a golden share in the company and still influence the policies of the company. But having a 51% gives them the comfort that there won't be any other backlash from other, I mean, minority shareholders saying that this is not done this is not to be done by this kind of companies. The costs have to be borne by the government. In any case, my personal feeling, I mean, as I have seen in administration, is that when government wants to implement its policies through organizations, now the cost of such policies, should be borne by the government. Cost of implementation of such policies have to be borne by the government. Otherwise you can't ask these companies to compete along with its peers in the private sector and then still say that you implement all these things with a cost loaded on to you, and then say that you have got to comparatively show a performance. I think that is not feasible. So we need to segregate what functions they should do under public policy and for which they are going to be compensated, and what functions then tell them that they have to compete along with their peers in the private sector. So that the point Mr. Pulla Rao mentioned about competitiveness has also got to be ingrained in these companies, because obviously they are going to survive as a going concern, as a competitive concern over a period of time, and that is very important not only for the economy but also for the employees of the company and the customers whom they serve.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Tripathi, taking the discussion forward now, in your vast experience as a bureaucrat in several different positions, of course, I must ask you this question: what has India's experience been in the past when it comes to disinvestment?
It is mixed, and strategic disinvestment has been few and far between. I mentioned the case of Balco. That was one major disinvestment, strategic disinvestment, and I was put in charge as CMD at that time because there were certain difficulties being encountered. First major disinvestment of this kind that was taking place. People went up to Supreme Court. Supreme Court upheld the government decision and government implementation of the measure. I would like to mention something here about 51%. According to my understanding, if government does not directly hold 51%, then CAG audit is not necessary, and some more flexibility is provided to the companies that are not directly held by government by 51%. So to that extent, they will be having more flexibility, and perhaps they can be enabled to face competition from private sector. It is true that all government companies are not equally efficient, equally efficient and productive and or economical, and wherever they face competition, if it is not a strategic subject and they are facing competition, and if they are not doing well and they are not able to grow on the resources that the government has already given, and they are drained on government resources, they are not able to generate surplus, they are not able to expand and compete properly to provide more jobs, and also not look after the local area, then those government companies in present times need not continue as government companies. So government has to take a hard look. I believe there are 250 government companies, of which about 50 companies are more or less drained on government resources. So those companies must be given go by, and only those companies which are necessary for government to keep its hold, so that the economic situation, the concentration of economic power does not get generated. Although there is another way, now that government in most sectors has got regulators, government has got competition commission, government has sectoral regulators. So those are more efficient ways of keeping competition and ensuring that concentration of economic power does not take place.
Right.
Government should continue only in those areas where it is not feasible or it is not practical for private sector to enter, or it is a very depressed and backward area, the investment is not coming in that area. You would have noticed that now in defense sector also private investment is being encouraged, because for a very long time it was an anomalous position that we were buying defense equipments from private companies outside India, but we were not allowing private companies in India to get into defense sector. So things have changed from 1950s and early 1960s, and we should also move with times.
All right, we should move with the time is what you're suggesting. Dr. Pulla Rao, I'm going to draw your attention to your opening statement on the program. You spoke about Air India. Air India has been, in the news and a hot topic of discussion. So let's focus on Air India for a little while. The government tried to divest Air India in the past as well, but it was unsuccessful. What does it need to do this time around when it looks yet again to go down that path?
I think government has already made it clear that it is ready to even dispose of 100% under given circumstances. I'm sure there will be a lot of buyers for that. Earlier, 51% they wanted to retain the shares last time, and if I am correct, and they let this. The market also was not good worldwide. They know aviation wasn't commanding. But when government has made up its mind to sell something like Air India, with a vast, other infrastructure it has, it will find buyers. Even in the recent jet issue, we found there were a lot of people, lot means important investors were ready to take it off. And I have no doubt if the government wants it to sell it, the buyer will be some big, huge investment fund, which will then hive off various functions, divide it in the typical way of selling off the entity and dividing the entity to do it. That's what they do in these big issues. But as I go back, in this thing, perhaps Mr. Gopalan may not agree, we must have one different rule for those public sector units which are living entities, which are having an impact on the rest of industries. Mr. Tripathi has said government has regulatory powers, regulatory authorities to control. But Mr. Tripathi also knows that since last 70 years, regulatory bodies have been victims of regulatory capture. A Nobel Prize was given to an economist on this theory. So all these so-called industries competition, where they are regulated, eventually become victims fully or partially of regulatory capture. Therefore, I am not that optimistic that once you sell out, government will have any power on the aviation sector. It has none today to even regulate predatory pricing. Just after the closure of jet, prices have gone up of tickets. Therefore, government, to answer your question, I don't see any problem at all when government says we are ready to sell it off 100%. Automatically, it will be a very quick job, and trade unions and others will be set aside unless they can bid for it, which never happens literally in India. I have not seen that happen in jet or other industries. Therefore, government will be able to sell it off. But I would only counsel that go make haste slowly.
Sure.
Don't do it fast, because there's not enough regulation in the aviation sector, and it's a vast public good. I believe there are 10 lakh passengers a day. Though Air India is controlling only 18%, it is a very viable, vibrant participant, and it is not making losses now, except earlier when it bought those huge loads of planes which were not necessary. So some public sector units have still a use if they can be toned up, and therefore those should be under the strategic investment where government retains 51% at any cost.
Okay. Mr. Gopalan, your thoughts on Air India?
Well, Mr. Pullarao has mentioned that I have a slightly different view. Look at this organization. It's from a great position. It has, because of its, huge staff strength and unnecessary assets which are not producing anything, which are a drag on the money that is being put on there. I think that, and with the 18% market share, I don't see any reason why Air India should continue to be a government company. Year after year, it has got into problems on government funding it through budgetary resources, both for equity and as for the loans they have got to repay on the planes they had purchased, and a good number of them are grounded now because of various reasons. And with all the subsidies, they tried to hive off subsidiaries and try to see whether those subsidiaries could also function efficiently so that the drag on the main company could be lower, but that did not work out. The airline sector is an intensely competitive sector today world over. Now, if you are able to make them function like Singapore Airlines so efficiently, I don't mind doing it. All I want to see is that there is no drag on government resources in supporting a commercial activity which is already substantially being done in the private sector. So I would say that if you can turn around Air India so that it makes successful a profitable company, which in my view, with all the given circumstances, given various other factors which are plaguing that company, I don't think it is feasible at this particular moment. And therefore, I believe that the best thing the government can do is to dispose of this company in a way that it is, it's able to function effectively well. And let me tell you, it is not going to be very easy disposing it off, because there will be issues relating to the loans they have already contracted. There are issues relating to the over staff which they have. So staff size has been very, very huge. There are, subsidiaries in Air India Express, you have got engineering, this thing, there's an MRO, there is a ground handling, there are a host of other things. How to value them properly and sell them, that's going to be a task. It is not going to be easy. But I think Air India is a good candidate for divestment.
Okay. That having been said, Mr. Tripathi, and because of the reasons that have already been raised by the two other panelists, is that one of the big reasons why the government decided in the budget or made that announcement that they're going to open up FDI in the aviation sector?
Well, I'll give two instances why Air India under government control cannot function efficiently. You would recall in 1990 there was an accident, and Air India, under government pressure, then they had to ground all Airbus which they had recently acquired. Then in about 2004 to 2008 period, they bought any number of aircrafts when they did not need them. Thirdly, there was not enough synergy between Air India and Indian Airlines, but the merger was pushed down. And it is overstaffed. It has overhang of very large amount of loan. It is actually financially at this point of time, given the intense competition, not viable. It will continue to be drained on resources. For strategic purposes, they can keep a small airline out of Air India under the control, but the rest of the Air India has to go. People are interested only in the assets, because I'm not making a value judgment, but for most entrepreneurs, the staff in public sector is a labor aristocracy, and they are not very comfortable with the same staff. So they will therefore do some screening also, and that is why government gives them voluntary retirement also, knowing fully well that all of them cannot be absorbed. So there will be a lot of pain in strategic divestment of Air India. But if the government has made up its mind after the failure in earlier 2 years, then it has to push it down. So let's see how it goes.
Okay. Dr. Purna, so apart from Air India, who are the other prime suspects as far as divestment is concerned?
Some of them have been really, they recently sold Dredging Corporation of India to some other government entities partially for 1,000. There are many such units where government's role is over now. You set them up when there was nobody else willing to do it in India. Now that role is over. Private sector is doing everything. They're running even metros somewhere or ready to build them. So therefore, you can literally take up any industry which is not dealing with the public. And I would only like to stress the banks, for the simple reason, otherwise the government will have no handle. Do you think you would have opened 15 crore Jan Dhan Yojana accounts if they were only ICICI or private banks? You cannot do anything. In this country, where the government has got a huge social expenditure and they want to send it now to direct transfer, cash transfer, only public sector banks, in my opinion, can do it at the moment. Maybe in the future something else is going to work out. So therefore, non-financial companies, including banks, and those serving public, like the railways, and as I like what Mr. Tripathi has said, why not retain the core function of aviation through a small company? That will serve the purpose with a reduced staff to balance the market, to see that government really has an executive regulatory power over that sector in this country. Therefore, I think all are prime candidates for divestment except the financial companies, and of course, I don't think government will open up the atomic energy and other sectors for various reasons. Otherwise, most of them can be, you get rid of them because there's no need anymore. I don't find any need of most of the other companies. Therefore, this is the case where government should be more careful, but make haste slowly. You can't reverse some decisions. And assets, government should be careful. Many of these public sector units have vast assets. Take Visakhapatnam Steel Plant. It has got 23,000 acres in the middle of Visakhapatnam. Nowadays, a major steel plant doesn't require more than 4,000 or 5,000 acres, or even less. So people are eyeing to take that over for the land. And I'm sure most public sector units have such assets. So government should be careful. Even selling equity, they will gain control over these assets. So we should be careful in that. And inviting FDI also has other problems. Once they come in, they will have immense power socially and using the international media and their own government and consulate powers. So we have to be careful. While it's welcome, be careful.
Okay, closing comments now from all my guests, starting first with you, Mr. Gopalan, talking about assets. Of course, there's talk of railways and its assets also, and probably, going down that road as well.
Well, the railways has, lot of landed assets which can be used for any, tourist activities or for, warehousing activities, which is allied to the railways functioning of transportation. There are many such activities which railways lands can be used. The one thing which we all should keep in mind is that when we say the public sector units have a lot of landed assets which can be monetized, please beware. The state governments who own the land have transferred lands to these public sector undertakings because they are going to do a particular industry. Now the condition is that if the undertaking is not going to do that particular industrial activity, the state has a right to resume the land back. So bulk of the lands which are available in the CPSCs are of this category only. So there are very few CPSUs which have land which is totally owned by them. So let us not get carried away by the feeling that there is a lot of land available, they can be easily monetized and public sector can be saved, or something can be disposed of, people can be paid off. I think these are all something which will take it with a pinch of salt.
Okay.
Take it with a lot of caution.
Okay.
But strategic divestment, in my view, as Mr. Pullarao says, there are many CPSUs which don't deserve to be there because of the reason they were started at a time when they were necessary. Now the market forces have taken over. There is no need for them to continue.
Sure.
Those kind of these things can be disposed of in my view.
Mr. Tripathi, your concluding remarks on the program.
No, I agree that there are many PSUs which do not serve any strategic purpose, or economically they are not so important. There are other companies in the same area and doing much better, so they can be divested. Give an example of BSNL and MTNL. They have huge buildings, huge assets, and I don't see any building of either Airtel or Vodafone or Jio. I don't know how they operate. The asset light. Whereas these companies have so much of assets. So the assets have to be properly disposed of, and I agree that in many cases the state governments have given them huge amounts of land, thinking that there will be local development after these companies come there and they will utilize. So they have to take state governments also on board in utilizing those assets. But buildings and equipments and many other things, these assets these companies have, they can be properly utilized, and many of these companies are suitable for strategic disinvestment, but of course a careful look has to be given to each and every case.
Absolutely. And Dr. Pullarao, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
It's a subject on which government is very keen, and as the budget and later remarks is that it wants to use some of this funds to take care of the deficits which are coming around. So that's good, it's government's money. Where there's waste, you can cut it down if you do a good sale of it. But as I keep saying to this whole thing, make haste slowly. These are irreversible decisions. Make haste slowly.
Okay. Be careful. Go ahead strategically and think before you ink is what all the panelists are suggesting on the program. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. See you again next time.